Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. So I'm going to go over 4 wide receivers that I've identified as pretty significant bust candidates ahead of 2025. Again, these are not untalented players. These are good players, and these are players that I still could see myself potentially drafting in the right situation. But these are guys that I just think have a pretty high risk level associated with them, especially when it comes to their relative ADP. For the purposes of this video, you had to be drafted inside the top 24 at the position. I just find that it's hard to really call a player that's being drafted as like the wide receiver 50 a bust, because like you can draft them if they suck. It doesn't really matter. But if you draft a guy early on and it hurts, it really does hurt your fantasy team. So those are the players we're talking about here. That means there's going to be some some kind of hot takes with this stuff, just because I'm obviously talking bad about players that are pretty high up on people's draft boards. So if you have any disagreements or comments with that, just let me know in the comments below. It's super fun interacting with you there. If you have any players that you think are busts that I didn't mention in this video, just let me know in the comments below as well. It should be a lot of fun. I did a running back video like this just a couple days ago, so if you haven't seen that one, highly recommend you guys go watch that. And enjoy. Let's get into it. So starting things off out of the gates here, we've got T. Higgins as a guy that I really just don't find myself drafting a whole lot of. I've done 19 best ball drafts so far, and I believe I have him on one of my teams, and he slipped pretty far in that one. So I totally understand that T. Higgins is incredibly talented. Just drafting him as the wide receiver 12 feels a little bit crazy to me. His career high finish is the wide receiver 17, and a lot of that's just due to injury. But that's part of the concern here, is you're drafting him as your wide receiver 1, taking him as the wide receiver 12. In a standard 12-team league, he is somebody's wide receiver 1, and that he's just far too inconsistent for that. Typically when you're drafting a guy as your wide receiver 1, you really want him to be a reliable weekly asset for you. You want to make sure that he's like the anchor for your roster at the wide receiver position, and he's incredibly inconsistent. He's generally very touchdown dependent, and obviously he's a guy that can go out there and catch 15 touchdown passes if things break right. But there's just a lot of uncertainty here. I'd be super shocked to see him play a full season. He's a really awesome wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, in my opinion, because he gives you a really high weekly upside. But as your wide receiver 1, I want to see that floor as well. And I just don't really see that here with T. Higgins. So I'm often passing him up just for better options in my mind. Again, he's still an incredibly talented player. There's a clear path towards him potentially staying healthy and having a really consistent season here, but it's just tough for me to get behind his ADP right now because you're drafting him ahead of something he's ever done. And at this point in his career, he's through 4 years now. It's tough, 5 years now, actually. It'd just be tough to assume he's going to be better this year than he's ever been. So tough sell for me there, but again, I get it. He's super talented. I just don't find myself drafting him much. And this one kind of hurts here, but I got JSN sort of marked as a bust, and just because I think there's a lot of red flags and question marks surrounding him right now, and that's a lot more uncertainty than I want for a guy being drafted in the second round. Again, he's an incredibly talented player. We did see him sort of break out over the back half of last season, and if he just had a lot of continuity going into this year, I'd be super excited about him, but I'm just really worried about the offense that we're going to see in Seattle here. They clearly want to run the ball a ton. They've got brought in Kubiak as their offensive coordinator. They've still got Mike McDonald as their head coach. So you've got a defensive-minded head coach, a run-first offensive coordinator that's certainly going to impact the overall volume we're going to see for this team. And in my eyes, JSN got a pretty significant downgrade at the quarterback position. Say what you want about Geno. Maybe he's worse for a winning standpoint or whatever, but he's been throwing for over 4,000 yards for several years in a row now. That really does elevate the floor and ceiling of every single player on the roster there. And Sam Darnold, we've seen have one good year over the course of his entire career. He did it with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Kevin O'Connell. He did it in the best system in the NFL, if not the best, one of the best there. So there's a lot of reasons to be concerned about what Sam Darnold's going to do in this offense, especially given the offensive line play in Seattle has been pretty horrendous for years now, and it's certainly not something to be excited about when you've got Sam Darnold, who's notoriously bad under pressure. So there's just a lot of room for just concern in terms of how well this overall offense is going to look. And then we really don't know how the snaps are going to shake out of the wide receiver position here as well. You've got Cooper Kupp and JSN as the clear 1-2. MVS is probably going to start as the outside wide receiver there. But JSN and Cooper Kupp are both primarily slot wide receivers. JSN has, at least so far in his career, really dominated out of the slot. So if he has to get moved outside, I'm not saying he can't do it, but we just haven't really seen it in the NFL so much yet. So if Kupp's on the inside, JSN's on the outside, that's just another potential risk factor here with JSN because he's effectively playing a whole new position there. He's just being drafted as a wide receiver 14 right now. So you're drafting him as a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1. And I think that's just a bit too high of a price tag for a player that is tied to Sam Darnold, still a little bit unproven, and in an offense that I don't really love. There are wide receivers going after him like Rashee Rice, Marvin Harrison, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams. There's a couple others that I would take over JSN. And, if he falls down and finishes the wide receiver 20, That's a pretty bad draft pick for a guy you're drafting at the wide receiver 14. So I don't love it. Again, I understand the upside there. There's a clear path towards success here, but there's just a lot of question marks, and I do find myself passing on him more often than not. Next up, we've got Xavier Worthy, who's currently being drafted as the wide receiver 23, and that just feels way too high for me right now. I think if we look back at how well last season went for Worthy, I think you could generally agree that everything that could have gone right for him generally did. You had Rashee Rice lose most of the season due to a season-ending injury. You had Hollywood miss pretty much the entire year as well, and Travis Kelce sort of took a step back, was not himself. So there was just a clear need and opportunity here for Xavier Worthy to step up and be the alpha in this offense. And if you just look at it, like, everything was in front of him there. He's got Patrick Mahomes. He should have been the number one target in the offense. And what did we get out of it? We got a wide receiver 33 finish. So finished 10 spots behind where he's being drafted now. And going into this year, you're going to have a healthy Rashee Rice, a healthy Hollywood. And if you just look at what these players do, Xavier Worthy sort of had to take over that Rashee Rice role where he's being utilized close to the line of scrimmage. He's not as good at that as Rashee Rice, so he's not going to have that role anymore. As far as being a deep threat and being like just a generally good route runner, I think Hollywood's a much more pure and consistent route runner than Worthy. So all you really have is Xavier Worthy being a burner, a guy who's just going to clear out players. And it's sort of just a guy that I feel like is going to run a lot of empty routes. He's just going to take a safety off over the top and really not get targeted very often. And, you know, he's got less chemistry with Mahomes than Kelce. Just overall, it feels like Worthy, in my mind, is kind of the odd man out here. He's not going to be a go-to guy on third down like Hollywood or Kelce might be. He's not going to be the guy that they're manufacturing touches for like they are for Rashee Rice. So I think he's going to have a few spike weeks as a deep threat. You know, he'll catch a 50 or 60-yard touchdown a couple times here and there this season, but they're not going to manufacture touches for him, and it just makes him far too unreliable for me to be drafting as a wide receiver 2 on my roster. He's also just going ahead of some really talented players. He's being drafted ahead of Jameson Williams, Tenero McMillan, George Pickens, Jalen Waddle. All of those guys I would take ahead of him. Chris Godwin as well. Cortland Sutton. There's just a lot of better players in my mind being drafted after him, and that means in my mind that his ADP is way too high. So I'm not really drafting him anywhere yet. I don't think I have him on any of my best ball teams, and that's best ball where those spike weeks are actually more valuable, and I'm still not targeting him. So I'm pretty much fading him pretty hard right now. I like Rashee Rice. I think he's going to have a great year, but Worthy just feels like the odd man out in this offense for me. And the last one I'm going to bring up here is going to be Garrett Wilson. And I understand that the volume is going to be there in terms of target share. There's nobody else in this offense that's going to command any sort of respectable target share. Like, there's a chance here that Mason Taylor is the number 2 target in this offense. And that's certainly at least it's a check mark here. It's a good thing for Garrett Wilson. But beyond that, like, there's no touchdown upside here. Justin Fields has a career high of 17 passing touchdowns in a season. That's disgusting. We want our receivers to have 10 receiving touchdown upside. If things break right, I don't see any world where Garrett Wilson catches 10 receiving touchdowns this season with Justin Fields at quarterback. And really the main argument that people make for Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson here is that Justin Fields supported DJ Moore, I think 2 or 3 years ago in Chicago for his career best season. And the first thing is that most of that production came in a single game. He had a 250-yard game with 3 touchdowns against the horrendous Washington Commanders defense. And on top of that, a lot of that production came on screen passes. Garrett Wilson is not nearly as good of a screen receiver. He's just not as good with that ball after the catch as DJ Moore is. And even look at that Washington game. I believe DJ Moore had a 62-yard receiving touchdown on a screen pass. That's not Justin Fields making that happen. That's DJ Moore. And Garrett Wilson just isn't that kind of player. He's a better route runner than DJ Moore, but after the catch, he's not nearly as good. And on top of that, the most targets a player has ever had from Justin Fields in an entire season is 136. That was DJ Moore. And Garrett Wilson himself has averaged 156.3 targets per season in his career. That means that even if Garrett Wilson gets the most targets that any player from Justin Fields has ever gotten, which is fair to say, he's still probably going to finish short of his career average in targets. So we'd expect to see a reduction in volume. There's no real touchdown upside here. And then there's just the overall efficiency and accuracy questions here with Justin Fields. We don't know how, are we going to get a 60% reception percentage here from Garrett Wilson? I don't know. That's just too many question marks there for a guy being drafted as a wide receiver 13. I understand that Garrett Wilson's still an incredibly talented player, but when I'm drafting a guy that's high, I want to feel like there's a clear path towards at least 100 receptions or 10 touchdowns, or ideally both. And I don't see a world where Garrett Wilson finishes with either of those marks this season. And for that reason, I just don't find myself drafting him a whole lot. So that'll do it for the wide receiver bust video. Up next, I'll do a combined quarterback and tight end bust video. So stay tuned for that one. That one will probably come out in a couple of days. If you guys haven't already, I highly recommend that you guys subscribe to the channel. There will be 3 or more videos every single week the entire course of the rest of the off season, and there'll be even more than that during the regular season. So if you stick around all year, we're going to win some championships together, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I highly recommend you guys do that. If you made it this far in the video, just give it a thumbs up. It helps me out. And if you made it this far, I do hope that this video helped you out as well. So thanks, guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're getting into the meat of July here, and then we're going to have some really fun football stuff coming up with training camp, preseason. Going to be a lot of fun here. So super excited and can't wait for more football. So thanks, guys, and I'll catch you with the next one. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter @RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.